A shocking double diagnosis for a local family.
In a lot of ways, our story is pretty extraordinary, but in a lot of ways, it's also really ordinary.
Beth Cassib, who works for the Orlando Sentinel, sharing her miracle story after she was diagnosed with a brain tumor just months after her husband, Grady, learned that he had brain cancer. The journey has changed their lives forever. And we are joined this morning by Beth Cassib. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It was an incredible column that you wrote. You actually told people on Facebook last year when all this was going on what was happening, but then you recently wrote a column about it and really laid it out there for everybody to hear your story. It was a very brave thing for you to do. Tell me why you wanted to put it on paper.
Thank you. It took me a while to get to that point. I actually didn't say anything about my own diagnosis until maybe about 3 or 4 months ago. We went through a lot last year, and I just wasn't at a point where I was ready to do it. But most recently, looking ahead to May, which happens to be Brain Tumor Awareness Month, right. I thought, you know, if this last year has taught me anything, it's, you know, not to wait until next year or the year after. It's to, if you can do something now, do it now. And so I decided to, you know, I spent a lot of time writing other people's stories, but, you know, this story ended up about me.
One of the things I thought was really fascinating about the story is that you're going through all of this with Grady. He's been diagnosed. Obviously, there's a lot of fear about what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
But you were having a nagging problem at the time that you kept writing off as being nothing.
Yeah.
Tell the folks at home about that.
You know, I think a lot of women especially deal with this. They notice something is different and they think, oh, it's just stress, I'm tired, these other issues are more important. But we all have to listen to our bodies, and we know ourselves best. And if something isn't feeling quite right, you ought to get it checked out. And I put it off, and then finally I thought, you know, I really do need to deal with this. And I made myself an appointment, but the first couple times I went to the doctor, you know, they looked in my ear and they said, looks good, you don't have an ear infection. And I thought, okay, great, maybe it really is just fatigue and stress.
Right.
But I just, as time went on, a few more months went on, I thought, no, you know, something is not quite right here. And I decided to go further, and that's when the doctor suggested I have some more tests done.
So you talk a lot as well in the column about this coincidence, right? About this rare coincidence.
Yeah.
What did the doctors say to you? Because you actually called Grady's doctor, right? You said you had a cell number, and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to call him because something's not right here. What did he say to you when both diagnoses came out?
So Grady had been already diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor and had already had several surgeries and was going through treatment. And his brain surgeon is at UF Health. She's wonderful. She was really supportive and is obviously, she's just a very accomplished surgeon and researcher in this area. And she had given me her phone because, you know, she was keeping close tabs on him. And so when I went to the doctor and got my MRI results, I thought, you know, I need to know. I was at an ear doctor. I needed to really talk to, in my mind, a brain expert.
Right.
And so I called her. She called me right back. And, you know, she was able to offer me a little bit of support and some information about my situation, which ended up being quite different from Grady's.
Thank goodness. But it was interesting, too, about the rarity of you both, right? You're two young people, young parents, both having this issue at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, every doctor we spoke to said this is virtually unheard of, to be diagnosed with 2 different primary brain tumors. You know, there's over 100 types of tumors that can start in the brain, okay? And so for us to each have that and be diagnosed and present with symptoms within a few months of each other was just extremely rare. They were all a little mystified by that, and so were we. But the more people I've interviewed, researchers, doctors, you know, people who, you know, just research, people who actually treat patients, you know, this sort of thing does happen from time to time. They do see weird cases like this, and they don't think there's any connection. These are 2 very different types of things. But it was it was quite a double whammy for our family, to say the least.
Imagine. The good news is that you're both doing well now.
Yeah,
yes, both
absolutely.
doing good. And you talked a little bit about how your faith really helped you through this too.
Yeah, I think, you know, we are doing well. We're very lucky. And, you know, the point of my column was how luck is really kind of what you make and what you decide your luck is going to be. And for us, the fact that we had good health care, that we had an excellent insurance plan, that we had family and friends who supported us, you know, those are all things that made us feel very lucky, and what I think a lot of people would look at as a very unlucky situation.
Right.
Faith is a big part of that too. You know, we talk to our pastor many times, but also I would tell people, you know, if you're being treated somewhere, if you're seeing your physician or you're at a hospital, don't be afraid to ask them for a social worker or for a counselor.
Right.
Even though that you might not think that has anything to do with your diagnosis, you know, ask for that level of support if you want it and if you think it can help you, or maybe even if you don't think it can help you, give it a try anyway.
Absolutely.
Because taking care of the mind, body, and the spirit is so important during a time like that.
We're so glad that you and Grady are going to be okay, and thank you for sharing your story
Yeah, of
with
course,
us.
Amy.
Beth Cassett.
Always good to
If
be
you
with you.
haven't read her column, read her column. It is excellent, from the Orlando Sentinel. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Always great
Thank
to see you,
you.
Beth.